Hi everyone, Mr. Kyler here. I've been missing seeing you all at church and singing with you in particular. I hope everyone is well and doing okay. For all of you students who might be watching this, I also wish you the very best as your distance learning gets started up for school. I know it's going to be a new challenge, and I'll pray for patience for everybody as they take on this new challenge and a new way of learning. To say the least, these are different kinds of days. I wanted to share some thoughts with you about perseverance and how it's tied into some of the things we've been talking about at church, some of the music we've been singing. You know, we just don't know how long this COVID-19 virus will be a part of our lives, how long it's going to continue to disrupt things. But we do know that God is with us and will watch over us through it all. During the past 6 weeks of Lent, Pastor Malcolm's sermon messages have included ideas about our experiences during Lent. Now, these experiences could be, for example, maybe you experience a time of temptation, or maybe a time of repentance. These are things we might experience any time, but we pay a particular attention to those concepts during Lent as it leads up to the crucifixion and then, of course, Easter. The very first week that we were unable to be together in worship, Pastor Malcolm reminded us in his sermon that Jesus has room in his heart for everyone, and we are to live the same way, with room in our hearts for everyone, no matter who they are, how different they might be, or where they might be. We sang a song at the end of that service called "We Shall Overcome." I want to share the story about the person whose music inspired that particular song. Charles Albert Tindley was born in 1851 in a small town here in Maryland named Berlin. Now, if you travel to Ocean City in the summer to go to the beach, just before you get to Ocean City, you may see a road sign that points off and says Berlin to the right. Berlin is just a little way off the main road as you're going to Ocean City. It's still there today. Now, Charles, when he was born, his father was still considered a slave, even in 1851. Now, his mother was free. Because of that, Charles himself was considered free. So as he worked in the fields as a young boy, he did not work as a slave. He was actually hired to work in the fields at that time. His life was an experience in perseverance. For example, he learned to read, mostly teaching himself, by studying scraps of newspapers at night in the family's cabin. As a young man, he worked in the fields during the day and then attended night school. As a young man, he moved to Philadelphia, got a job as a janitor in a church, and again attended night school, this time seminary, so he could learn to be a preacher. Eventually, he became a preacher at the very church where he had been a janitor. Now, all of those things are examples of perseverance. Throughout his life and his studies, music was one of the main ways he expressed his faith, and he wrote many gospel songs that are still sung today. In fact, several appear in our United Methodist hymnal. The next time you have a hymnal in your hands, go to the index and look up Charles Tindley, and you'll see 4 or 5 listings of songs that he wrote that we still sing. Now, he grew up singing spirituals in the fields while he worked and also when he went to church. Spirituals, generally speaking, were not written down during this time. They were based on Old Testament stories, and they featured themes of escape and freedom, a very important idea to slaves. Now, by the time Tindley was composing music, many church songs and hymns were actually being written down at that point. They were being published, and they included harmony and were sometimes accompanied by instruments. These new songs celebrated the good news of the New Testament, and because of that, they became known as gospel songs. Now, I have a book. It's a short book called By and By, and it tells the story of Charles Tindley's life. That's where I got the information that I just shared with you. The book is presented with simple poetry, some quotes from some of his songs that he wrote, and some beautiful pictures. I think it's a very easy book to enjoy, and I will make sure that it gets into the church library so that when we're all back together again, you could stop by and pick it up at some time. It's called By and By, Charles Albert Tindley, the father of gospel music. And I just want to share with you very quickly one of the beautiful color drawings in the book. This is a picture of Charles Tindley preaching at his church. And I'd like to read what it says on this first page here. Folks called me the people's preacher. I aimed to serve my Lord and Master. And then a quote from one of his songs. We are taught to love each other, and as one should treat a brother, we must do by one another. Now, to tie this all together, Charles Tindley wrote a gospel hymn called I'll Overcome Someday. And that song became the basis for the song in our hymnal that we sang a few weeks ago, We Shall Overcome. We Shall Overcome became the theme song for the civil rights movement in America in the 1950s and 1960s. This was a time when our country was very challenged to find new ways to live and work together and find room in our hearts for everyone. The words to the song are fairly easy to remember, and I think we could probably sing together. The first verse goes, we shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. The second verse is we'll walk hand in hand. The third, we shall all be free. The fourth, we shall live in peace. And finally, the Lord will see us through. Yes, believe in your heart that the Lord will see us through someday. I hope we can keep these thoughts in mind, these encouraging thoughts in mind, as we have to stay at home for the weeks ahead. We can just keep doing what we do, doing school, helping out at home, connecting with friends, participating in our weekly worship that's being streamed online. We simply just have to persevere. But we can persevere knowing that God is with us every day, cares for us always, and will help us overcome. Thanks now. Hope to see you real soon. Bye.